Welcome tonight to our event. My name is Melanie Brooks, and I am the audience coordinator at the Bangor Daily News. I'm going to start off by thanking our event partner, which is Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Free events like these are possible because of their support, and I'm very glad to have them on board with us. Thank you for those joining us who are our Bangor Daily News subscribers. I'm assuming some of you are probably joining us for the very first time, and I want to welcome you to our BDN Events Online series. We are super happy that you're here. And I'm just going to point out a few things. You're all muted at this time, and that's so that we can hear our special guests, but we do want to hear from you. So as we go along in our Q&A session with our guests, if you have a question for any of our speakers, if you could please use the chat function and send them in to me, I can ask them on your behalf. And we'll have some time at the end of our event to hear from all of you, your questions and your comments. So when we get to that point, you'll be able to unmute yourself and join us with your question or comment. It's always nice to hear other voices besides mine. So without further ado, let's get started. Our guests tonight include Fausto Pifferrer from Blue Elephant Events, Lee Duran from Nadra Photography, and Sarah Maurer from the 1812 Farm and Stone Cove Catering. So what I would like to do is invite each of them to take turns and introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their business. So Fausto, why don't you go first?
Thank you. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. My name is Fausto Pifferrer. I'm VP of Blue Elephant Events and Catering. We are in this state now 14 years. I celebrate my 35th anniversary in the industry in August. We primarily do weddings. 90% of our business is weddings and 10% is corporate. And in 2020, well, you know what's happening. So that's what we do. So on to the next.
Hi, I'm Sarah Maurer. I'm with co-owner of Stone Cove Catering and the 1812 Farm in Bristol, lovely mid-coast. And we cater both on-site at our venue and off-site around the state. We've had the venue for about 14 years and been catering in the events catering industry for about 20 years. And I'm so excited that we were all able to get together and talk. I miss working with everybody so much. That's one of the downsides of this. And on to Lee.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you, Melanie, for hosting us tonight. It's great to be here with you all. My name is Lee Duran, and I'm a wedding photographer and co-partner at Nadra Photography down in Scarborough. And we specialize in destination Maine weddings. So about 98% of our business revenue is coming from that sector. We have 3 full-time photographers on our staff, myself included. And yeah, as Fausto said, 2020, here we go.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all 3 of you agreeing to join me tonight. If you have a question, I have opened up the chat box. If you don't know where the chat is, if you move your mouse around your home screen, there's a little chat bubble at the bottom. I left everybody a message, so please feel free to share your questions or comments. So let's dive in a little bit. I would love to hear how COVID-19 has affected Lee, Sarah, and Fausto's businesses specifically. Take it away.
Should I jump in?
Go ahead, Fausto.
So for us, I think the earth sort of stopped moving. I think it was March 13th. We started to get the word around March, what was happening all over the world, but it wasn't until the 9th, and Sarah, you were with me at the conference, and we just literally watched the globe just change. And when we got back to Maine, the phones just started ringing. And for us, I think a lot of it is learning new procedures and protocols, especially with the COVID and the virus, has really taken its toll, you know, mentally, physically. You have to learn all of these new procedures, things that we already know, but now we're enhancing it, and we're actually doing double work to keep everybody safe. And then watching all of our events switch to 2021 and completely losing 2020 has been, one of those things that you go, holy moly, what am I going to do? Sarah, are you feeling the same thing? I mean, you were with me at the conference in Vegas and you were watching the same people I was watching.
It's been really overwhelming to see that our entire season, which for us was shaping up to be, an unbelievably good season, just disappear in a matter of moments. I'm sure all of you are feeling the same way. And then having to deal with all the clients, and it just became really overwhelming, both emotionally and almost physically, having to listen to each and every couple talk about what they were going through and how they were having to, postpone or cancel or rethink entirely their plans for their big day. And for some of them, especially the ones that were out in the early part of the season, April and May, it's been multiple kind of attempts at trying to recreate their plans, whether it was postponing once and then trying to move the date again or do something small. So we lost probably about 70% of our season so far, and are anticipating, now that we know that it's only going to be 50 guests for the fall, that there'll be further losses. So we've probably lost about $800,000 worth of business that's moved one way or another. We also do corporate, and so even though a lot of those events are annual, and so we'll have it next year, that event's completely gone for us for this year, which is also hard to take. And then laying off our staff, which has been, a lot of these folks rely on this summer, especially the summer season, to supplement their income, and that's just gone. Lee?
Yeah. Well, like Sarah and Fausto have said, as of March 1st of this year, we were looking at a banner year for our business. It was going to be our best year since 2015. And then when we shut down, a lot of our couples were still hanging on. Some of our May and early June moved to the fall, figuring that this would be past us by then. But most people were hanging on until Governor Mills's announcement at the very end of April with the restriction on gatherings, and at the time the 2-week quarantine for out-of-staters coming in. And so once that news hit, as Fausto said, the phones just started ringing, the emails started coming in, and they just started falling like dominoes, because so much of our business is people who don't live in Maine but are coming to Maine to get married. And, it's hard to get information that's local. And so once they heard the news, they just started jumping ship. So here we are, it's July 16th, and I should have photographed my first wedding on May 16th. And I have yet to photograph a wedding in 2020. Now, the interesting thing is the couples who have decided to carry on in 2020 and make modifications to their event to be able to work within the confines and the restrictions that are in place right now. So we do have some smaller events that have really scaled down for August and September and October. And interestingly enough, we've picked up a couple of small elopements where they had to modify their plans, and so now they're coming to Maine to get married. So that's been interesting to see a couple picked up amidst all of the postponements and cancellations. But to Sarah's point as well, it's the scale that we're dealing with this on. I mean, as a business, we might see 1 or 2 cancellations a year, but it's the scale of everybody, your whole calendar, your whole season, having to look at either changing or modifying, or if they can't figure that out, then canceling. That's been really challenging to deal with the scale that we're talking about with this pandemic.
So weddings are very emotional events. It's a huge event in a person's life. And some people plan for years for their wedding. So what has it been like to talk to your clients who are so devastated about their wedding when you yourselves are losing so much business and you're also devastated? What's it like to have that conversation?
For us, it's been heartbreaking. At some point, especially early on, we had to start limiting the number of couples we talked to in one day. You could only have so many of those conversations in a day before. I don't know, Fausto and Lee, if you want to chime in, but you can only talk to so many heartbroken people in one day before it just, you just don't have any more to give.
It was hard. I think we took a different approach. We didn't reach out right away. We wanted to formulate the correct answers to tell our clients. So one of the first things we told our salespeople is to just wait, let them reach out to you, and then we can formulate. We have 24 hours to formulate those answers, and then to help them and guide them through their planning process. And it worked really well. I'm hoping that it works really well for this next round of what's happening, because we still have about 17 events that are holding on really tight. But to be honest with you, it's heartbreaking. Like Sarah said, you sit there and the emotions are really big. And like Sarah also said, you can only take so much of it in one day, because then you're bringing it home, and you don't need to bring that home, because there's all of this anxiety and anger that's happening that you have to sort of start separating it a little bit. And that's what we've been doing at Blue Elephant. So, Lee?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. It has, if your heart goes out to all of these couples, because you know how long they've been planning for these events. And I can't imagine when you're a month out or 2 months out or 3 months out, when you've already been waiting 12 months or you've already been waiting 18 months, and then to just all of a sudden have the rug pulled out from underneath you. It's an awful situation to be in, but as part of their vendor team, they're looking to us for guidance to help them through this situation. And our perspective has been that, we want to figure this out together. Like, this is a new situation for everybody. So let's work together to find out what's going to be the best solution for you. And, as I said, we had some couples who've decided to just move forward with their 2020 dates and honor their original wedding date, but they've pared it down to meet the restrictions. And a lot of couples, we've seen some of my August events, they're getting married on their original date, but they're doing it at the family home, and they're doing it with 10 or 15 or 20 close family members and friends, but then they're postponing the big party and the big reception and the celebration until next year. So there are some, creative ways that we can move forward. And that's what the couples are looking to us for. They're looking to us for that guidance.
But it's funny, I have one client that I've had since 2018. She actually booked us in 2018, postponed her wedding from 2019 to 2020. And when she called me, I answered the phone, and because I saw who it was, and I said, "You are getting married in 2020, and it's going to be 50 people. Mm-hmm. And she just needed to hear that. And I just told her, this is what you're doing, because if you take it another year, you're never going to get married.
Yeah.
On Sunday, we're doing a walkthrough at her venue, and we're going with 50 people. But sometimes you're going to have those hard conversations with your clients. And, luckily I can do that. But
it's also about reminding them that small weddings, I think it was Jessica actually that said that, small weddings can really be lovely. You get to spend more time with your guests. You don't need to have a 200-person wedding to still have a beautiful day and to still enjoy being with your guests. And it can be lovely. And you can do things that maybe you wouldn't have been able to do if you had 200 people. So you could do, a more elaborate plated meal, or you can do more flowers, or you can do more decor, but it can still be the best day of your life, mm-hmm. just with 50 people.
And they need to hear that. I think they need to hear that from their planners and their venues and their vendor teams, because they're coming from a perspective that they've never done this before, you know, so they're looking to us to help offer those suggestions. And I know at one point, Sarah, you know, we had a client who was considering, you know, doing 50 people on one day and 50 people on the next day, because, you know, the groom's family hosts the rehearsal dinner anyway, and the bride's family typically hosts the wedding. So, you know, why not do 2 ceremonies? Whoever gets to say they did that, you get to wear the wedding dress twice and do the groom's family one day and the bride's family the next day. Actually, Nadra photographed a wedding in May that was supposed to be 150 people. And back in May, of course, we were under greater restrictions than we are now. So they moved it to 10 people at their family home. And the bride said something really sweet. She said, well, my mom said it cuts the cost of the dress in half because now I get to wear it twice, you know, once this year and once next year when they have their big celebration. So I think offering those suggestions to them, I think that they're unaware of those ideas until we present them to them.
You're leading me right into the next question, which is so wonderful. I've heard about this campaign called Postpone, Don't Cancel. So I would love for you guys to tell me a little bit about that, how it came to be, and what it means.
So I'll take the lead on that one. In April, we wrote the governor a letter because we were seeing what was happening to the industry. And we decided to just put it out there and say, and it was a very pleasant letter. It just detailed everything. I don't know if a lot of viewers understand that the industry brings in $1 billion to the state of Maine. And on top of that, 845,000 small businesses, which are in the wedding industry and the event world. That's amazing when you look at that. So I was fearful that because it's happening across the globe, that it would really crush us. So we wrote her this letter, and then this idea was popping into my head to gather people together. And so I called Sarah, I called Will, I called a bunch of people, I put it out there, and I said, let's get together and take a photo, but we'll physical distance, and then we merged the photo together. Will did that. I don't know how, that's a photographer trick. And then we did a short video, and we've been putting it out there. As of yesterday, we're at 93,000 views, which I'm really proud of. And we've got it now nationally, which is really nice as well. But one of the reasons why Postpone, Don't Cancel is because if you cancel your event, you will devastate the industry, not just here, but across the globe. And when I say, you know, 845,000 small businesses just belong to the wedding industry, that's a Goldman Sachs number. That's not something that was pulled out of the air. That's from Goldman Sachs. You can't crush, we work on these deposits and we work on these retainers. And one of the things that I was very passionate is to get that out there, because what was happening across the board is we were getting these stories about couples that weren't having their refunds, and it almost seemed that we were being mean or disrespectful or not understanding their plight. But what they weren't understanding was ours too. If in one shot you had to return 77 to 100 retainers because every wedding canceled, you might as well put the close sign on your door. And that's not what we were trying to do. What we were trying to do is salvage it. But by no means did that salvage it, because remember, you just moved your revenue to next year. So one of the things Sarah and Lee and I were talking about last night, it really is recovery time really isn't going to be until 2023. Because when you think about COVID, I think COVID is really going to be here for 2 years. Statistically, that's what everybody's saying. So we have to brace ourselves. I always assumed that the wedding industry in a whole was recession proof, but I never thought it would be pandemic. And that's what's scaring me. I survived 9/11 in this industry. I survived the recession in 2008. And this one, it's scaring the bejeebies out of me. So Sarah, how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, having folks postpone is definitely better than having them cancel. And I think it was important at the beginning to make sure that we tried to keep those weddings in Maine for all of the other small businesses, all the other vendors, and working with the vendor teams to make sure that the couples didn't forget that they needed to check with, the entire team when you're looking at rescheduling. You can't just pick a random date because people already had things on their 2021 schedule. So I think that in Maine, we just work so collectively that it's been great as far as postponing. People have really stepped up to the plate to work together and to help each other out and to try and make sure that someone doesn't get left out of a postponement, or that, you know, we're looking at multiple dates. And I think that's been really encouraging, that as an industry in Maine, we are able to come together to help each other, and get these couples staying in Maine, but just moving their dates.
Yeah, I think Fausto and Sarah said it well, but just to kind of put a fine point on that, it doesn't service anyone to cancel the event. It doesn't service the client because they're going to be out a lot of money in lost deposits and retainers. It doesn't service the vendor team because they're going to be out the income that they were anticipating having. So I think the Postpone Don't Cancel campaign has done a wonderful job encouraging couples to move to next year. And we've been fortunate that the vast majority of our weddings have moved and have not canceled. We've had a handful cancel. I could count them on one hand, but we've had 20 postpone to next year.
And I think that's one of the things that we wanted to get out there, because I think we were seeing that it was not really being talked about, and I always feel like we are hospitality, but we're not considered hospitality, which is really funny, because in that $1 billion, that's just wedding related, and Maine brings in $6 billion total in tourism. So let's take $1 billion out of that. When you look at events, we also are helping the hotels and the restaurants, because we're all doing those referrals that are sending that money out there. And it's just not a venue or catering. It's everybody suffers. Officiants, it's photography, it's the baker, the photo booth companies. These are all small companies. And, you know, I know firsthand that there are a couple that are gone. They're no longer in business. And I'm saddened by that. And every day I hear more and more of it, or you'll get an email and it'll say, you know, we're closing our doors, and I just don't want that to happen. I mean, I invested 14 years into this state, and I can't, this virus is more devastating than when it's happening. And I'm not putting the overwhelmingness of people dying because I want my business to survive. That's not what I'm saying. I'm fearful that people will think that the way to go is micro weddings. And to be honest with you, I was talking to Lee and Sarah last night about this. I want to see my daughter married. I want to see her go down the aisle. I want the big party for her and all of those things. And I think we live in a world that it's disposable, and people think of weddings as this frivolous thing that's off to the side, but they don't see all of the care that goes into it. And I think all of us as an industry people care more than people understand, because when we're at these events, I know for me firsthand, when I see a parent dance with their child, it does bring these emotions in for me. And I want that for me when it's my turn to dance with my daughter or walk her down the aisle. And I don't want to see weddings be a forgotten thing because we're doing virtual stuff or micro weddings and things on a much smaller scale. You know, it's not always about the numbers, it's about the whole celebration.
I wanted to just point out, Lynn had sent in a comment that said, as a wedding officiant, I'm seeing very similar interest in the postponing and sometimes opting for an elopement this year. Rescheduling large events for 2021, and something that can be encouraged. Sarah had a good question. She said that she would find it incredibly helpful to get some insight on actual event protocols for events this season. How are people approaching those? Can you guys share kind of what you're doing in your businesses?
As far as staff, you know, we're doing the face coverings and gloves, and then there's extensive protocols that have been developed across the country that as caterers we're sharing with each other about how to put in place, you know, effective manners of handling guests and keeping them safe and sanitizing stations and cleaning everything. Fausto was saying earlier today his hands smell like Clorox, but it is. I mean, it's just wiping everything and keeping everyone safe. It's more, I think it's harder to get the guests. I think that's the bigger concern, is to get the guests to make sure that they keep on their face coverings and they maintain physical distancing. But just constant reminders on that kind of thing. And, you know, even like passing hors d'oeuvres, instead of just having guests reach in, having a server with gloves that's handing them an individual plated bite, or using tongs to hand each plate, you know, each bite out to guests. There's a lot of really creative things you can do that still are, you know, make things look semi-normal and not feel sterile, but be very sanitized and very safe.
And also, Carrie, one of the things that we're pushing out there is to create a COVID kit for your bands. Whether you're a planner, a band, a venue, whatever you are, have that ready and available so that you are stepping up to the plate. Don't put it on somebody else. Put it on yourself and challenge yourself to say, look, I'm going to have this. And one of the things I tell everybody all the time is a picture is worth 1,000 words. Photograph it. So once you put out all the stuff that you need, whether it's gloves, sanitizing stations, you know, Disney put out the best disclaimer, and I tell this to everybody. Disney has a team of lawyers around the globe, so you know they've checked everything out. And their statement reads, and I post this today. Actually, we had a small event. And I put this in. I put the line of where we were at. An inherent risk of exposure to COVID-19 exists in any public place where people are present. COVID-19 is extremely contagious disease that can lead to serious illness and death. By visiting, leave it blank and then put, you know, with a dry erase mark, put it in. You voluntarily assume all risks related to insurance, to ensure exposure of COVID-19. You need to protect yourself and your business because the insurance companies aren't protecting us. So having these procedures, Clorox, wipes, a thermal thermometer so that you can take temperatures if you had to. Be proactive so that if anything does happen, you're not the one that they're saying it happened because of them. You've done your job. And, you know, the thing I always say to people is, if I had an event, it's 50 people, and the father of the bride wants to dance with his daughter, what are we going to say? No, that's not going to happen. We all know that. So we can't pretend that we're going to follow these rules, and we're not there to police. We are allowed to have 50 people. The guidelines, like Sarah said, we're trying to help. We've actually sent them to Heather Johnson and Governor Mills. There's 4 pages of it because right now they want us to follow the restaurant guide. So what we're doing is saying, look, we're being proactive. We are showing you that we can have an event for 100 and keep everybody safe. Right, Sarah? I think that as an industry, we're the ones who are cooking in field kitchens. And nobody's dying, so you have to really think about it that way. We as caterers and event professionals know how to protect our clients. And I think that that's one of the things that COVID hasn't taken away from us, because I think that we've been very diligent on that front.
Lee, what are you doing from a photography standpoint?
Well, that's pretty easy. We have long lenses. We have long lenses, and when we're not using, and by the way, the best place to use your long lens is outside. It's actually the lens that I prefer to use, and I only switch to a shorter lens when I go inside because I can't shoot a long lens outside. So as long as we're outside, I can shoot a long lens all day and prefer to. And be very happy that way. But we have masks, and we'll wear masks if we can't social distance. So if we have to get in close, and we can even have gloves, you know, if you have to get in and move a client's dress or you know, take a hair out of their face or something, you can wear gloves so that when you are getting close to people, that you are still practicing safely and within the guidelines.
I know I was talking to Johnna from Wavelength the other day, and she said that one of the things the band's concerned about is once people start drinking and dancing, is that they would get close to the band. So I think we also have to think about with bands and DJs, you know, putting a 6-foot mark on the floor such that, you know, you don't want people going up close for their requests. They can, most DJs and bands even, I think, have the ability that they can take requests from texts or, communication that way. So thinking about that when you're thinking about the whole event on how to keep all the other vendors in a safe distance as well.
There's a venue in Pennsylvania right now that created boxes on the dance floor. This family can dance here, this family can dance here. But you're right, Sarah, it's hard. When you have a couple of drinks in you, you're moving from box to box. So
yeah,
where does it become the policing part is the hard time that you're having, I think, at an event, because it sort of puts us in a very awkward position with the people who are paying the bill, and yes, we have the right to say yes or no, we're going to not attend or attend the event. But once they've paid you, you need to attend the event and honor your contract. So.
I think we're all going to have some stories to tell in November once we get through the rest of this season. So we should reconvene and talk about how did 2020 go? how did those dancing in boxes work out?
But
Maria had a good question. What are you guys doing if your clients are disregarding the 50-person limit? What can you do?
We're not taking them. We're telling people right up front that we are following all government mandates. And so if they plan on, and as the caterer, we are going to know, we're assuming we're going to know, because you have to feed everybody if they're going over. And we're just saying that we won't violate a government mandate. We won't put our people or our business at risk. So we're absolutely saying no.
And
I've had those hard conversations with people. I just had one the other earlier today who was like, well, just make the proposal for 100 and then we'll worry about it. And I said, I won't. I only do 50 because that's the government mandate. So it's a hard conversation to say. I mean, at this point, my husband's sitting across from me. He's like, we need the business. And I'm like, we're not taking over 50. So it's a hard no.
And I think too, one of the things is, we are doing the same thing that Sarah is, but once it becomes at the event, obviously they're not going to have more than 50 because that's what we're planning for and that's what we bring. But the problem is policing at the event. That can get tricky. And that's a dance that everybody has to do for themselves and figure out what's best for your business and best for the location that you're at. Everyone knows that I am very venue driven, so I always follow the venue rule and say, okay, what are we supposed to do and what are we not supposed to do? Because at the end of the day, the venue is technically my client. Yes, the bride and groom, groom and groom, bride and bride, the couples, whoever they are the client. But at the end of the day, I'm really getting my work through the venue. And so I will respect what the venue has to say. And so I will give them the first call and say, this is what's happening. What do we do?
Maria had pointing out that some of the weddings are at private residences, so there aren't really any venue rules, which is, I think, prompted her question.
Well, the social gathering limits are private or public space. It's so even, I know that couples are saying, well, we're going to be at a private home so we can do whatever we want, and they can't. And so, if somebody's going to violate the order, I'm sure there's somebody that's going to do the business, but it puts the entire Maine wedding industry in a bad light, because what we've been saying to the Mills administration is that we can do these events safely. We want to follow the guidelines, but work with us. And so if we just blatantly disregard the guidelines, then we're putting the entire Maine wedding industry in a bad light and just saying, well, we're going to do whatever we want. And it's not right. It's not fair. And it just paints us as people that aren't going to help figure this out, are just going to go off rogue. I personally think it's the wrong thing to do, and it sends the wrong message, and we're not going to do it.
And we added a clause when you drop down to 50, we redid everybody's contract. So what we did in that clause is that this is all we're doing is 50. If there's 51 people, we reserve the right to walk out of your event. Don't call me crying, you were told 50. But we reserve the right to walk out, whether it's at a venue or whatever, we will walk out if it's 51. That's in our clause. So once everybody started moving and changing, we immediately made everybody sign new contracts, because we needed to protect ourselves. Lee, how are you guys handling that? If you go to a wedding and there's
Well,
no-
I think that's mostly a venue concern. But from our perspective, I mean, yeah, we feel the same way. I mean, it does not help anybody in the industry if, you know, out of one corner of our mouths, we're saying, okay, we're ready to open, we'll follow the guidelines, and then we just, you know, sweep it under the rug when we get there. So I don't think it helps anybody, and you know, certainly I haven't gotten any events and that are over 50, and would certainly ask them that question. If I heard, what, you're going to have 75, how are you going to get around, you know, the mandate? Do you know there's a mandate? But they're not having that conversation with me. They've already had that conversation, hopefully, with their venue, and if not their venue, then their planner. So by the time it's getting down to my level, those conversations have already been had. I do have an event coming up at a venue that's going to be 50 people, and the bride sent me the venue's guidelines, and they're following all of the guidelines. And they did have an interesting section there on masks for guests. They said guests are going to be required to wear masks except when eating and except for a photo. So if I was taking a photo, technically I could ask them to take their masks off. But I'm looking to the venues to make sure that they're doing their part there.
There is a way to go over 50. It seems a little cumbersome and costly, but you can have multiple groups of 50 as long as there's no intermingling of the groups. So at 1812, we're doing some self-sponsored concerts, and we literally ran a rope tied to stakes down the middle of the lawn and put up section A and section B, and we had separate bathrooms for each group. We had separate bar for each group. We announced at the beginning a separate entrance, separate exit. We announced at the beginning that they couldn't cross the sections, which almost was physically impossible. I guess you could have jumped over the rope. I mean, it wasn't that intimidating a barrier, but people were, of course, this was a social event. It wasn't a wedding, but people were perfectly happy to be in their section and laughed about it. I don't know how it would work for a wedding, but technically you can, as long as you keep them completely separate.
Another question that I had is if you had a number for what the economic impact would be for a canceled wedding in Maine for the industry. Do either of you have that information?
I think right now we are at, if I was going to guesstimate, I think from $1 billion, we're at 300 million. That's where we're going to be at the end of the year. That's it.
If we're lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're lucky. I know we're running at about 15%.
Oh, there's Mickey.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
I saw her.
You're
Her
quiet.
name pop up.
Is Jessie on? Because I think she knows the value of a single wedding to
Yeah.
the.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hi, Jessie.
So I think we're going to be above the 300 million mark, unfortunately. So last year, one wedding's footprint on average, if you cast off all of the additional revenue for lodging and hotel stays and restaurant consumption that is typically brought from a destination wedding, that footprint is on average with 125 people is about $1.5 million of trickle down revenue for one venue. So that's a lot of money, and that was last year's information. So I think we're going to be in excess of the $300 million loss for our industry out of that $1 billion number. But it's yet to be seen. I think with the information that we got from Heather yesterday, I think we're going to lose another third of our season with the fall, unfortunately now. So for us, I think we're going to wipe out what would have been our best year ever. And we're pushing some of that revenue, a very small portion of that revenue, into next year. But most of it is just going to go away. So
And for those of you that don't know, Jessica is from French's Point. So I know that there are other business owners on here. Feel free to unmute yourself and let us know what you're dealing with your business right now. We'd like
Now,
to
what's
hear some other
interesting is
voices.
I'm a venue owner, and I have a wedding this weekend with 38 people. I had one 2 weeks ago with 50 people. But what's happened is we're a destination venue with it lodging, and we put the lodge up on Airbnb, and we're going to have 4 or 5 rentals in the lodge. That
Good for you.
now it's not close. I can't charge them the same thing I do the wedding, but it's at least helps the cash flow. It'll make a few oil payments in the winter.
I just had a phone call this afternoon with Kate McDonough from Visit Portland, and they put out a survey to their members in March of this year, just to get an idea of the economic impact. And 38 businesses responded, and the total was 35 million just from those 38 businesses. That's a big number that Jess is talking about for weddings, 10 times that almost. But it has attracted attention from FEMA, and I know that that's a slow rolling machine, but there may be something coming down the pipeline. I don't know if it's going to be 6 months or a year, but those numbers certainly did attract attention from FEMA, and I know Visit Portland is working with them to see if they can get some aid to these businesses, because Maine is uniquely positioned in that we are so seasonal here, and so much of our income, from May through October, we have to make all of our annual revenue. And with weddings, unlike hospitality and tourism and restaurants, they've been able to reopen under certain restrictions and indoor dining and other things. Once a wedding's canceled, it's canceled. It's not coming back on your calendar for this year, even if restrictions change. So once those weddings left, we've lost them, and we've lost that income for this year. So those are some unique things about Maine, and I think what's making this harder on us than other parts of the country, because we are so seasonally based.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, Lee, because Visit Portland has been helping with the whole FEMA connection, because Ruben was on a Zoom with them. And so they are working. But one of the things that he pointed out, which I thought was really interesting, is that they didn't understand how intertwined we are with other businesses that might not be related to the wedding industry. And once that started to unravel, they were like, oh my God, it's affecting this person. It's affecting transportation. They weren't understanding that. And now they are. That when you shut one segment of the industry down, it's like a pebble in a pond. It's like a ripple effect. And that's, FEMA was willing to listen to that. So we were really grateful and hoping that some money comes out. But there is also another round of PPP that's coming. And there is word that all of PPP will be forgivable. It's just not out yet. And so I got that. Sarah, I'll share that with you. It's with Carl Clemens from ICA. I had a really great conversation with him, and that's the word, that if you're at $150,000, there's a way that they're just going to just say, if you used it it's forgivable. So keep that in mind and keep on the lookout, because there is going to be another round of that as well. And FEMA is going to have some money as well. So.
Yeah, well, not to go off topic here, but another thing I spoke to Kate about is, interestingly enough, where leads have really dried up for conferences and conventions, the leads are still coming in to the Marry and Me campaign for weddings. Mm-hmm. And she was saying that people still want to get married in Maine. They still want to have the transportation. They still want to have the photography. They still want to have the flowers, but they just want to do it on a smaller scale. So that's encouraging to hear that people are still looking to Maine as a great option to get married. I mean, especially now with COVID, why have your wedding in an air-conditioned ballroom in New Jersey or New York? You can come to Maine. We have it. We have beautiful. It's outside. We've got clean air, and it's beautiful. So now's the perfect time to get married in Maine.
Agreed. And how's everybody else felt about their? Let me get rid of that. How your bookings, did they go up for next year, as well as pushing them, the ones from this year to next year? Because I felt that my bookings for next year were really strong, and then pushing the weddings from this year to there. We did a lot of negotiating with clients, and I'm so grateful to a lot of my venues because they chose Fridays and Sundays, which we stopped taking events on Fridays and Sundays to sort of slow down what we were doing. And now we're back to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's been 2 years that I was doing a full weekend, and now I'm back to that. So next year is really, really busy, but it's not just busy with this year's work, but it's busy with work that booked during the pandemic time. So from March to July, we did some really good bookings and some substantial numbers. So I was really pleased with that. Anybody else feel that? I mean, because clients were fearful of their dates being booked up.
Yeah, we only had a few openings anyway. So what we had to do is we had to expand our season. So we're going to be opening up in April and going into November, and we have 4 Tuesday weddings. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't.
Mickey,
Where
can
are we
you
all going for December?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mickey, can you share what venue you're from?
Oh, I'm from Granite Ridge in Norway, Maine. And but it was a challenge. Now, what I'm wondering, and I hate to be a downer, but if what happens if we're closed next year?
Oh, Mickey,
I don't
Jesus.
know. I know.
We haven't got-
I have been totally positive until now. Totally positive.
we haven't gotten through this year yet, Mickey.
I know.
Stop.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up.
Maybe people will shake their heads,
But
Mickey.
we have had, what's interesting is 22 is starting to book. And what the couples are finding out is that everybody's booked because of all this moving around. And they said, oh, well, we're going to hurry up. And they're going to book quicker in 20. I've got a couple that's going to book in the next week or two for 22.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of them not having their date because of 21s and that type of thing. So it's going to be real interesting to see how the bookings go.
I agree.
How about other people that work in the industry? If you would love to say something, I would love to have you unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lynn Hunt, and I'm in the Bangor area, but more in Bar Harbor. That's where I do most of my wedding officiant duties and responsibilities. And I don't know if there's anyone else here on the task force that you've put together that is from the Bar Harbor area, but as most of you know, that is incredibly hit because it's totally a tourist destination, that everyone pretty much is canceling their wedding, or I do a lot of them in the the backyards of these lovely estates and that kind of thing. But most of them have chosen to do in a small elopement with 10 people, 8 people, sometimes just the 2, and move it to the next year. So I hope that's what you're seeing, especially you wonderful caterers out there, because you do such incredible work. I watch them all, and not that I've been introduced to any of you, but we have quite a few down on the island that work like that. And I hope that it is heartbreaking for the couples. That's where I'm, I know you all express that, and we're sitting there finishing up their vows and helping them put this ceremony together, and then they're calling me and crying, and we can't do it, and da, da, da. And I said, well, we can do that. Now, I'm trying to stay positive, but so we may be out on the rocks at Cadillac Mountain doing a very small one, and then hopefully they'll be at the Bar Harbor Inn or some of the other great venues that we have in Bar Harbor. But I'm hoping that most of them will not cancel, just postpone. And those are the kind of cheering words I give them. But
Thank you, Lynn.
you're welcome.
Good afternoon. This is Paul from the 1888 Wedding Barn here in Weston, Maine Mountains. I think from our standpoint here, we do a little bit of wedding planning with the brides and grooms and the wedding parties and such, as well as providing the venue space, catering, sometimes even the photo booth. So with that said, I mean, we kind of established really an intimacy with the bride and groom right from the very beginning, helping them, overcome, obstacles and barriers to success. We work with them on mitigating risk amongst their wedding party and guests. And so, weddings usually start, anywhere from 1 to 1.5 years. So when COVID hit, we always want to be an honest broker and, share with our clients, what's going on behind the scenes. And I think the frustration for me is, I am coming from corporate America. I think we can all deal with the truth of the matter. But I think in a lot of ways, the way the information was disseminated and the words that were chosen along the way kind of really undermine my personal, my warranty, I guess, my personal warranty to my brides, because we were forced to deal with interpreting some very vague terminology. And it wasn't like we were getting information freely. I'm very resourceful and looking out on the web for information to provide back to my brides. And fortunately for this group, Maine Wedding Cooperative, they were there for, at least for my business, because I would have had very little to really provide back to my brides. And I think that's where we kind of fell down a little. Once we kind of found out this unofficial Heather Johnson email without a letterhead, I'm going to probably act on it. But again, I just don't think we were very well represented. It sounds like we might not have a lobbyist working towards us for our benefit. And I think it would have been easier for us to give the brides the truth if we kind of knew more along the way. So that's my 2 cents.
Paul, I think you brought up a really great question too, because I think that if we would have known early on what to do, we would have been able to handle this situation a lot better. And I give Rhode Island a lot of credit, because Rhode Island came right out and said, that's it, no weddings, sorry, done, over, don't ask me again, it's not happening. Close it down for the EU. And they had a firm word, and it was there. I think, I don't want to be a conspiracy theory kind of person, but my fear is I wonder how much this has to do with the insurance industry, because across the board, no one is covered. And so do they not want to rock the boat with the insurance agencies that literally are holding $800 million and aren't paying anything out? I don't know. Call me crazy. I worry about that. But when you're looking at different things, Paul, be assured that in Georgia, a friend of mine sent me their restrictions, and they are just as convoluted. They don't make any sense. You can have 50 people, but outside you can have 500. It doesn't make sense. You can gather if this family quarantined for 14 days, but if this family didn't, it made no sense. And when this person had asked me, I said, I'm reading that no events. They're just basically running around, and it just basically says no event is allowed to happen if you read between the lines. And I think, Paul, you're absolutely 100% correct. If they would have been very clear, we would have known what to do, and we could have hunkered down sooner than later. And with the money, the way it's been dispersed, it's very hard to hunker down right now, because you still have staff, you still have to pay rent, you still have to pay mortgages, you still have to pay your purveyors. Sarah, you own your buildings, and you know what it's like. You're putting a roof on, and you know how scary that is.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to. That wasn't my choice. But I agree. It's very frustrating that the state of Maine continues to overlook the Maine wedding industry as a separate vital part of tourism, and just lumps us in to put in the guidance that if there's food being served, you should follow the restaurant protocols. We own a restaurant, we own a catering company, and they operate very differently. A catering company does not operate like a restaurant. A catering company is operating out of a field or out of a venue that we've never been to before. It's a different environment every time. Where a restaurant, I know exactly what the environment is. I control the environment, and I have the same staff working, there day in and day out. So it just is a continued problem for the Maine wedding industry that we're not viewed as a vital part of the tourism dollars. And I think that one of the things that COVID has brought is that we're collaborating more. And if we continue this collaboration and continue to have a strong voice and continue to lobby the state, then maybe we'll get the recognition and the attention that we've deserved part of the industry all along. And that's my hope, that we can continue going forward and get them to give us specific guidance and get them to give us specific dollars for advertising and more as we look forward to 21 and 22.
And you're right, Sarah, because I think, you know, I did a little research on just two companies, and between these two companies, payroll and another one, we're about 1.2 million in payroll, which is a huge economic footprint in the state of Maine. That's not something that you just you blow away. And I always look at the wedding industry as we're vital here, and we're not, like Sarah said, not even considered. We're not even a blimp on their radar. And so we need to make that different. And, you know, I'm all for a lobbyist like Paul, Mickey.
Paul said.
Yeah.
Let's work on that, Paul. We need a lobbyist.
Mickey's working on it. Mickey's working on it.
We're working on it. There will be, yeah, we have our board meeting upcoming.
And I want to jump in for a second, because as a band, I'm looking for guidelines. I'm following the New England wedding website, and those Boston bands are talking. There's no dance floor. There's no dancing. 50 people inside. You know, if it goes up to 100, we're not comfortable with 100 people swarming the band on the dance floor, and that's what's going to happen. So it's like, and you can't do an indoor. You can't do indoor and feel safe in November through all the winter months, you know, and some venues are going to be open during the winter, but that puts us in a really bad spot. So they're not changing and moving their dance parties to next year. They're either canceling with us or moving to next year. But we had one who thought she would do a ceremony, and she decided she's so overwhelmed with it that she canceled the venue and she's just doing a ceremony. So, I mean, I feel a little outside of what's happening in the wedding industry, because I just feel like there's no, like everybody else, there's no guidelines, and I don't know how to do anything other than protect ourselves and work with our vendors, and feeling that we're putting the extra hours in for our clients for that. And we're still getting attacked by them because they're worried about their deposits and everything else. So it seems like it's a fight all of the time. It's a fight constantly, and it's, I don't know. There's that part of it I want to throw into.
Yeah, well, actually, Christina had a really good, I don't know if you can see it on the chat, Melanie. That's a great question.
I can. Christina said that she feels another challenge has been how we all have such mixed emotions about gatherings. Vendors are nervous. Some aren't nervous at all. And then it's up to us to manage their clients with such a range of feelings. And I kind of feel like this is just the world we live in right now. Like I'm going through that right now with sending my kid back to school. Kind of the same thing. I know that people that have theaters are going through the same thing. You know, are people comfortable even going to the theater to see a show? So it's a big emotional problem that we're all dealing with in different ways right now.
And I think each vendor has to deal with that within themselves and their business. I am fearful that we've become too, I'm going to tell on you if you do this. I'm not saying to break the rules, but if we're at 50 people and somebody's not wearing a mask that's at the party, either you're going to have to grin and bear it, and I'm not saying I'm excusing that person, but if it happens to be the father of the bride who's writing the check, then don't go near him. Just stay on the other side of the room. Stay 6 feet apart. There you go. He can wear no mask and you're 6 feet apart. So I understand that a lot of vendors have a lot of that that fearfulness, but you have to do what's right for your business at the end of the day, and keep to the guidelines that are set. Don't go over 50. Make sure it's safe. 40 is better. Sarah, you and I talked earlier today, and I had a party for 20. It was down to 13. And I didn't know what to do. I was twiddling my thumbs for hours. I was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? But you know, I felt safe because it was only 13 people. So
if the client's wants to move forward, then it is, you know, our job as the vendor to find a way to make it work within the guidelines and to give them that guidance. But I say, if the client wants to move forward, then I'm going to find a way to make it happen. And within the guidelines, and if there's no guidelines, then we're smart people. You know, we can figure out how to do our jobs safely while social distancing and wearing a mask or using hand sanitizer or wearing gloves or whatever it is for our industry. But I understand everybody's got a different comfort level with this, and I take the client's lead. If the client isn't comfortable and they want to postpone, then I'll work with them. And if the client wants to move forward, then I'm going to help them find a way to do it in a way that will be safe and will follow what guidelines are out there. And in fact, the guidelines that we come up with, if there are none, might even be more secure. Yeah, more, because we know our industry, we know our unique sector of the market, you know. So that's my 2 cents.
Like Melanie said, if we're sending our children back to schools, and Sophia's school is 600 kids, if I can send her to a school with 600 kids inside of there, why can't I have an event for 100 inside, but I can shove 600 kids into one building? It doesn't make sense. And I think what we're not asking for anybody to break rules or to put anybody in harm's way. What we're asking is for some serious guidance and a real call to action when it comes to the event world, because $1 billion, I'm going to keep saying, is nothing to sneeze at. And we've been completely forgotten, whether it's in the press or whether it's on the radio. Mm-hmm. And across the board, it's not just Maine. My hand reaches far. It's every state and every country. We have the whole industry is devastated, and well, they're not getting help.
Mickey kind of touched on it a little bit, and we all sort of shut her down, but you know, she mentioned 2021 and what is that going to look like? And you know, like Mickey, I have, you know, tried to remain optimistic and positive. However, I think the writing is on the wall. I don't know that this will be behind us by 2021. I mean, clinical trials for a vaccine can sometimes take 2 years to see if they're safe. And so I think going forward to 2021, we're encouraging our couples to move forward and make your plans and book your venue and put your vendor team together, but just be willing to have a great backup plan in place just in case. And we already do that now. We already have backup plans in place for bad weather and if it rains. So we don't cancel the wedding and call off the ceremony when it rains. We have a plan B already in place. You know, we don't cancel the photography. You know, we have a plan B for the photography if it's going to rain. So not knowing what next year is going to look like, I would like to encourage people out there to carry on, continue to come to Maine to get married, continue to marry in Maine, but just be prepared to have a great backup plan in place in case. And that's where they are going to be looking, clients are going to be looking to their vendor team to guide them to a plan that will work within the guidelines that are in place.
Lee, I think that is a great sentiment. And it's 6:05, actually. We've gone a little bit longer than we were intended. I feel like we could sit here and talk for much longer. I just want to thank Lee and Sarah and Fausto for coming to this. You're all very passionate business owners. I know that this is hard for you guys. So I really appreciate all of you coming and sharing your stories and talking honestly about your businesses and how this is affecting you. So we're gonna call it a night here, but I have a feeling that this is a conversation that's gonna continue offline with some wonderful Maine wedding groups. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your honesty, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Melanie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.